You're listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon. It is The Bigger Picture and it's Mira Sivis. So the gifted child has never been a popular child, at least not with members of the pedagogic establishment, teachers in the classroom, kids in the playground, and most of all, the parents of children who wished their kids were gifted as well. There are signs, however, that maybe at least we're ready to embrace gifted children and bring them out of the cultural cold. And with me to, meet the needs of gifted children, how do we do that, is Kylie Booker from the Australian International School, together with Zuhaira Ali, the president of the National Association for Gifted Children Malaysia, as well as Florence Wong, mother of Reese Matthews, who is a child art prodigy. That's fantastic. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Before we even go on, I think many of us, to a very large extent, feel, or wished that our children are gifted. But who is really a gifted child? How would you define it?
A very good question, and quite a contentious one. But from a school's perspective, we would look at students that are 2 years ahead of their peers academically, and we have to set a standard there. And a child identified with an IQ of 135 and above is considered gifted cognitively. So that's a measure that we can use from a school's perspective.
Okay. And do you, if I even think that my child is gifted, so what do? Do I come forward and do a test and get things going from there?
Well, identification is really multifaceted. It's not one particular tool or test that will identify children. All children are present with different characteristics and traits, so it's important to bring in information from parents, from the school, from educational psychologists, and really just observing the children. And the parents know their children the best, so they are the best advocates for their children.
Right. Florence, of course, you are mother of Reese, who is a child art prodigy. How old is he?
He has just turned 6.
6, all right. Yes. Could you tell me how that journey was for you? When did you realize that, he was gifted?
When he was a toddler, we knew that he was a bit different from other children, and he started reading really early, at 2.5 years old, and he expresses himself very well. And he has got this huge vocabulary, and somehow he just knows how to use it in context, things like that. Being a new parent at that time, we thought, okay, every parent thinks that their children is the cutest
and the smartest.
Yeah. So we didn't think much about it, and we just left it, But when he started drawing at 3 years and 9 months old, we see that he showed me a picture and said, "Mom, look, this is so-and-so." And I look at it, it's just a blob with some lines. It's not recognizable. But within weeks, he taught himself how to draw objects that are, we can identify. And within months, he has this rage to master. He can draw up to 10 pages of A3 size paper filled with details and lots of things. And at that time, we are still in denial. We just said, okay, he's just good. And but then one day he came and said, "Mommy, look, this is an aerial view of Siena in Italy."
Wow.
Yeah, he just drew that, and with 3D buildings. We have never taught him how to draw, we just let him do whatever he wants. So that really got me thinking, okay, he's more than just smart. So that's when I start, Googling and stuff like that. And that's the first time I came upon the word gifted children. And then when I saw the characteristics, I was like, wow, that's my boy, So, that's the journey we have been going through.
Right.
And very recently we actually got into contact with Dr. Ellen Wiener. She's this professor of psychology of Boston College, very well respected professor. And when she saw Reese's work, she just said, wow, he is an art prodigy. Okay, because of the way he did his drawings and all the layers and all the technical things, which I don't really know. And that's how we found out that, okay, so he is not just gifted, but, it's something more.
Sure. So what did you do from there?
Nothing really changed. We just continue to to support him.
He went to normal school.
No, he's homeschooled.
Okay.
Yeah, so he has all the time in the world. So he gets to do his drawings and whatever he wants to.
Okay.
So we just support him.
So the homeschooling thing, was it a decision you made because you knew he was an art prodigy?
No, even before that.
You already decided.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Haira, what's the population, percentage of the population that is gifted here in Malaysia?
Well, if you look at the population census of children 0 to 14 years, about 7.8 million are children within that range. So if you take 2% of that, you'd find gifted children at least 156,558 children within that range are gifted. If you look at the age of 15 to 19, at least 56,714 are gifted, and this varies according to the population of the year. So there is quite a significant number of children who are gifted, and I think I feel very sorry for those who have gone unrecognized,
Yep.
or who have parents who really don't understand them or do not have the tools to deal with children, because they can be very challenging and very demanding.
Could you explain more? Because challenging, demanding, I mean, some of us would probably say that's my child as well, so how do you make that difference?
Well, I think it's very important to recognise that highly gifted children have asynchronous development, a very uneven development with their academic ability and their social and emotional abilities as well. So this can cause some great anxiety with the children, frustrations and things like that. So they exhibit behaviours that can be quite challenging for parents, but also for educators that have these children in their classes as well.
Yeah.
So, and the higher the giftedness, the heightened sensitivity of these children.
Right.
So,
Do you find that they're often ignored in class because the teachers probably just brand them as too smart, and so they don't quite need much attention? Do you find that happening here in Malaysia as well, Zuhaira?
I think in Malaysia, the teachers are actually trained to teach the average class. I mean, with 40 in a class, it's very difficult to pay attention to a highly gifted child or a child who is autistic.
Yeah.
Well, there are also gifted children who are autistic, and they're twice exceptional. But you can't blame the teacher 100%. She may recognize his or her potential, but at the same time she also has the responsibility of dealing with the whole class. So that is where techniques are very important in teaching, such as differentiated curriculums, very, very important, so that you address a whole range of abilities. I think it has been mentioned in the education blueprint, and we are waiting to see how it can be implemented optimally.
Sure. The blueprint aside, we've had the whole project of the University Kebangsaan Malaysia Permata Pintar School, which caters for the exceptional abilities and talents.
Yes.
When was this actually set up, Zohara?
It was set up a few years ago. I think in 2008. Our association, National Association for Gifted Children, and were invited to an informal tea party by the Prime Minister's, then the Deputy Prime Minister's wife, Datin Sri Rosmah Mansour, and from then the interest in gifted education started, and formally set up. The school was set up. It's called the Academy, Permata Pintar Academy.
Are there criteria you need to fulfill before you actually have access to the school?
Yes, definitely. There's UKM1 and UKM2, and tests, their assessments, in order to get in, their interviews, and it's quite rigorous, because we're looking at the whole nation. It's a very ambitious project, and of course it's not the perfect thing, but I think we have to start somewhere formally.
Yeah. Since 2008, how many kids have been enrolled in the school?
I don't have the exact figure. Professor Noria, who is the head of the Permata Pintar, has the figure, but it has been going on for at least 2 years, to my knowledge. Don't quote me though.
Fair enough. Well,
Please.
the moral of the story is we have something in place. We
Well-
need to take it to the next level.
Yes, but you must understand that it's very specific. It's very science based, so it does not address all gifted children.
Someone like Reese, for an example.
Yes, he may not, because he's artistically oriented, whereas the Permata Pintar currently is science and academically oriented. However, the Permata umbrella has Permata Seni, which is for the arts, and Permata Insan, which is for, religion, Islamic concept. So maybe Reese might come under the Permata Insan project.
But all of this for gifted children?
They are for children who are highly capable and highly intelligent in their lines.
Okay. Kylie, I'm just curious. I mean, earlier on, Zuhaira spoke about a differentiated curriculum. Is that what you have in place in Australia at the moment? To, give these gifted children a chance?
In our Australian curriculum at the Australian International School, we have our gifted students in mainstream classes, and our teachers have been trained and supported to deliver a differentiated curriculum so that they're meeting the needs of all the students in the class. Whilst the gifted students need very specific needs, they're delivering in such a way that will benefit all the children to reach their potential. And the gifted students have an individual education plan that we work on, setting learning outcomes and goals specific to their gifts. For example, for Reese, who's a gifted art prodigy, then that would be set up in his education plan to support that talent and that gift that he has.
Having said that, Reese has a pretty holistic education plan, am I correct? Probably with emphasis on art. Is that what's happening?
Actually, Reese is not just artistically gifted, he's also intellectually gifted. So he is into everything.
So at the age of 6, what sort of conversations do you have with him? I'm very curious.
adult. Okay, let me give you an example.
Yes, give me an example, please.
The past few months, he's really into astrology. So specifically in astrophysics and cosmology. And this mummy's knowledge of astronomy is just limited to the planets in the solar system. So Reese just comes to me and, Mom, how do you spell spaghettification or heliopause, things like that. And I just stare at him and say, let me check it out on the internet,
Google to the rescue.
Yeah, and he will explain things to me, and I don't understand. So that's one of the challenge I have with him.
As a parent.
Yes, and because he has so much time, he just read, and he's self-taught. Having gifted children like that, most of the time they will learn on their own. And we parents are just there to support them, to give them resources. So it's quite funny. So I'll sit down and start researching what he's up to. And then the next thing I know, he comes, Mom, do you know about lysosomes and peroxisomes, about cells, how DNA, RNA, and so now I have to go to
Genetics.
another area to read up, and he's only 6.
Yes. Where is he getting all this information from?
Reading. He loves reading, and he reads adult books, basically, and also he does his own research on the internet, on YouTube, and things like that.
Right.
So we just give him whatever resources we can, and go to the library, pick up books, and he would just read on his own.
But what are some of your other challenges, Florence?
I think it's the social emotional part. That is a challenge. Like Kylie earlier mentioned, they have asynchronous development.
Yeah.
Socially, Reese, he doesn't read social cues very well, and he's very individualistic. So when in group activities, he just cannot participate well. He wants everything his way, doesn't really listen to the teacher. Taking instruction is difficult, and when we go for field trips, I have to constantly tell Reese, sit down, Reese, don't do that. It's quite challenging in that sense.
All right. Is he the only child at the moment, or
Yes.
you have other siblings? We have a question here from a listener who says, I just want to know, if a gifted child goes unrecognized, his skills and his talents are not honed, will it go away, and does he become a normal child? What happens?
Good question. It can go two different ways. In Reese's case, he's quite motivated to learn and to succeed, but in a lot of cases, gifted children aren't motivated, they're disengaged, And so some of those children, if they're not recognised, will go through school as an underachiever and have quite significant issues in regard to that, and they certainly won't achieve at their potential. So it's really important and imperative to identify those students as early as possible in the school system.
To have the sort of support. I mean, have you given up everything, Florence, to actually be with him and, make sure he gets the proper education? Sorry, Zuhaira, before that.
There's an example of a gifted child, I think, in Malaysian history, basically, by the name of Hadafi. He was assessed as being gifted, and there was a lot of publicity in the newspaper, and he was even asked to act in a movie. And many years on, when they went to check on him, he was a roti canai seller. He had actually nothing had really happened. Nothing had really progressed since. In fact, it had regressed. So this is a lesson to be learned about gifted kids, that it has to be continuous, and there's a lot of encouragement and motivation and love and understanding. So it has happened in this case, but at the same time, not to be so negative. There are also a lot of children who have also succeeded with their gifts because of the nurturing environment.
Right. Florence, I was asking you just now.
Yeah, I would say we have given up a lot of things just to make sure that Reese is properly nurtured. Yeah, and it can be quite expensive when you have a highly gifted child. There's a lot of things that you need to provide the child to stimulate the child. Yeah, but the whole process is that as parents we want to give the best to our children, and sadly here we don't really have the support, so we are on our own very much.
But I suppose the key here is to get them identified, to get them checked, and then from there at least you're aware of it, and then you can move forward.
It's very important.
It is extremely important. When we come back, we'll find out more about meeting the needs of gifted children. If you have a question for either one of the ladies, send us a text message. The number is 016-201-9000, or tweet BFM Radio.
You're listening to BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good afternoon. It is The Bigger Picture, and it's Mira Sivasudi. We're discussing we're trying to meet the needs of gifted children, and with me Kylie Booker from the Australian International School, together with Zuhaira Ali, the president of the National Association for Gifted Children Malaysia, as well as Florence Wong, who's the mother of Reese Matthews. Reese is 6 and he's a child art prodigy. Now, in Malaysia, who and where can we go if we need confirmation on whether or not our child is gifted, Zuhaira?
In Malaysia, there are quite a few psychologists to assess them formally. There are some who are of ill repute, but I shall not mention them here. But you have to be aware that they can be quite expensive. You also have the UKM Permata Pintar program. They have psychologists there who can assess. I think some of them are offered free, but of course because of the limited time and the manpower, you really have to book your place there. So that's the official channel.
Is there a website, to go in and look for certified psychologists and avoid those, the ones that you don't really want to bump into?
Well, I think if you would like to find out references, you can actually contact the National Association for Gifted Children. We have parents and committee members who've had experiences, bad ones and good ones, and I think we will be able to share them with the parents who ask.
Right.
Apart from that, I think there are also some international schools have their form of assessments.
Okay.
And also some universities. There's some private universities like HELP and psychology departments like Nottingham University, Sunway. They have their team of people who can assess gifted.
Florence, did you go and get Reese actually psychologically tested?
Not yet, because he's not ready. Usually, we were told to have him assessed when he is 6+, because these assessments can be quite long, and if the child is not ready, you may not get the proper results.
There are varying degrees of giftedness, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Kylie, could you just tell me a bit more about that?
Well, yes, there is different degrees of giftedness, and their level of giftedness will then determine what sort of support and what sort of needs that they require. Generally, the mildly gifted students fit quite well into mainstream schooling in a regular class with the challenges.
Okay.
But if a student is highly gifted or exceptionally gifted, that's when you see the more significant issues, both within school, at home, socially and emotionally, and the curriculum not fitting sometimes their needs as well.
Okay. I'm just thinking, what's your long-term goal, Florence? I mean, what are your plans for Reese? To be in university at, 12, 13, and that comes with a whole lot of, challenges as well.
Okay, when I first found out that Reese was gifted, my goal was like what you're saying, accelerate him and just let him complete his studies as soon as possible. But I went to a meeting. It was organized by the National Gifted Children Association, and a former gifted child actually shared, his experiences and whatnot at that time. And I was, after hearing him, I realized that what's all the rush? I mean, if the child finished his studies by 13, 14 years old, who's going to hire them?
Yep.
And what's the point? And the child is being put together with children or perhaps teenagers that are like 7, 8 years older than them. What kind of life is he really, living and all that? So
It reminds me of Doogie Howser, MD.
That's right.
A doctor, at such a young age.
May I say that the meeting that we had and the gentleman who was a very gifted child is just one example of how it didn't turn out. But at the same time, there are also many examples of how children thrive under acceleration and actually get very depressed if they are not accelerated, because their mind is really moving very fast. The only thing is that, as I agree with Reese's mom, is that we have to cater for the socio-emotional part of
That's right.
that.
I mean, like as Florence said, I mean, what's he going to do in the workforce at 13 or 14?
Yeah.
Well, he could go on and do more. He doesn't have to work. He can go and do something else.
Right.
So we have
studying.
some,
Keep studying till you can go to work.
Yeah, but for us, we just we are very relaxed, very easygoing. So whatever he wants to learn, we will support him, and we'll just try to find as much resources as we can. The plan is to go with his with whatever he wants at his own pace. If he really wants to go faster, we will do that. But if he doesn't want to, we're not going to force. So it will let him lead us.
Okay.
So that's the important thing here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that every child is an individual, and the thing is, I support gifted students being in their age-related year groups at school, but I support acceleration, particularly in certain subjects and things like that. But where they can stay with their peers at their appropriate age, it can benefit them, especially with their social development as well.
Okay. Your experience dealing with gifted children in school, Kylie, how's that been?
Well, I've had nearly 20 years experience. I've seen lots of gifted students, and this brings me to a particular student that was about 10 years ahead of where her age-related peers were, and her parents were keen to accelerate her, but we pushed on and kept her in her age-appropriate year. And it was a very successful transition through schooling for her, but every child has a different story, so it's really important when we're dealing with gifted children to work on an individual basis with an individual plan, and then we can monitor that and change that as they go through.
Right. What do you take into account?
I take into account their maturity, their social maturity, their emotional, and also their size, because obviously we have currently a 7-year-old little girl who reads at a 16 plus age, and she's tiny, and it wouldn't be appropriate for her to be in a year 8 class, for example. So it's really important to take into consideration the whole child and everything that imparts that child and their education.
It's a very delicate process, isn't it? You really need to be alert. You need to be there to support them in every aspect and to understand at what speed they're actually going at. And I think that's the toughest thing to do.
And you just said it's a process. It's quite it's a collaboration between the parents, the schools, the children themselves, because they need to be involved in the whole process. And that's where I think the strength with the Australian education is being able to support the whole child with the way that our curriculum is set up.
So, I mean, academically he excels. What about to have a more holistic life? What about sports? How do you introduce that to him, Florence?
He has tried gymnastic, and after a while he said, "No, Mom, I don't like it," and he started arguing with the instructors, and with all his reasoning for not doing the stretching because it hurts, things like that. So eventually we stopped, and then we went into soccer, and he finds it fun. But I have to say, physically he is not as strong. So there are issues here and there. So basically, we are trying to work on his physical aspect.
When you say not as strong, are you talking about not as strong as a 6-year-old, or are you comparing it to his mind? Because it's a mismatch. You cannot expect him to have a physical strength of a 10 or an 11-year-old.
It's not that, but like hand-eye coordination, it's not so good. There are some mismatch, like you put it that way.
Okay, she's looking for the perfect child.
She is, especially when it's your only one, isn't it? It is always difficult. We have another question here from Frank Stein via Twitter, and he's asking, how about the Mensa test? Will that help to test whether they're gifted or not?
Well, I think it's the Mensa test is simply another tool that we can identify whether the child has high intellect, non-verbal reasoning intellect. It's just one tool, and it doesn't. It's not an answer to identify a gifted student on its own in an isolated way, but it would be a good indicator of the child's potential.
Okay. Are there any misconceptions in the country, Zohara, as to these in relation to these gifted children?
I think there are many. I think that's the reason why gifted children are getting such a bad deal here generally.
Not just here, I think it's all over the world, really.
Yeah, I think the major myth is that if you leave them alone, they can still thrive, and why bother to help them because they can be on their own. I think that is something that we really have to look into. And there's some people who just refuse to recognize their own gifted children, or who don't understand why the children are gifted. I think you also have to look at the areas, the rural areas, the urban poor or the urban medium income people who do not have the educational means of learning about what makes their child tick. They're engrossed in their daily lives trying to bring some food home. So these are the people whom I really would like to reach out to as well.
Right. Infrastructure-wise, what do you think we should have in place? Simple things like maybe an entrance test for every child before they even go to year 1 may actually help to, may help you recognize some of these children.
Well, the government is putting into place something that is similar. That's along those lines. There are pros and cons because you have to you have to realize this is a test across the nation, and sometimes you may not actually they'll find the actual gifted kids.
You're right. I mean, someone like Reese, you would know art is normally not tested, is it?
Well, it's not only that, it's also the tests are not perfect, so you have to go beyond tests, although that is a general guide. And just because the child did not fare well in the test, he may have had a headache, he may have had a fever, just like us, we may have had a bad day. That doesn't mean the child's not intelligent. In fact, for some of the Permata UKM tests, I think I've seen quite a few people who've fallen through the cracks, and it could be because of the fact that these are the things, it's online, it's very difficult. But we are trying. I think the government is trying, although not many are happy, but at least something's moving in that direction, and officially as well.
Right. How does Australia do it?
Well, Australia uses a multifaceted approach, which is what I was mentioning before. So there isn't one particular instrument of tests, but it's a group of checklists that the parents do, the school does, the peers, that they also bring the peers in as well, and then also assessment-based, paper-based testing as well. But it's really important to note that with paper-based tests, highly gifted students often do very poorly because they're looking for a different answer than the one that's most obvious.
Yes.
So that needs to be brought into there as well.
We have one gifted child who's in the association, and he was going through these tests, and instead of answering the questions, he started questioning the questions, and in the end he failed the test. But his mother sent him. Well, he's gone with his mother to New Zealand, and he's doing a degree in physics at a very young age and enjoying it.
Right.
So these things do happen.
As you said, I mean, if you have the means, then you can probably nurture this. But if you don't, then
this is it. Yeah. I think what the Permata Pintar program is trying to address is those who do not have the means, especially.
Which indirectly is also contributing to our brain drain, isn't it? We have a physicist who's living in New Zealand now, who's, contributing to the New Zealand economy.
Well, hopefully he'll come back to gain his experience there and come back, won't he?
Let's hope. We can only hope, isn't it? But there is a chance we could lose many of these children like that if we don't, keep them here. So now you have a Gifted Education Conference 2012, which is happening on the 10th of November. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Okay, this was originally a collaboration between the school and the National Association for Gifted as a partnership, and it was to provide the opportunity for parents of gifted children some resources and some connections with other parents to come together and to learn more and to get more information that would support them with their children. It's also for educators of children in the local schools as well as the international schools.
Okay. Your final advice on meeting the needs of gifted children, Kylie?
My advice would be that we need to look at each individual child and recognise they all have special talents and gifts, and we need to adjust what we support those children with those gifts.
Zahira?
My advice is to seek knowledge, and apart from the internet and interacting with other parents, one of the ways is to join the association, to attend a conference, because our theme is actually building connections and enhancing giftedness. I think so.
That's all right. How do we get in touch with you at the association?
Well, log on to www.nagcm.org.
Okay, nagcm.org.
Yes.
All right.
And you will find more information also about the conference, which will be on November the 10th. Mm-hmm. And we hope to see all of you out there.
Sure. And that for more information on the Gifted Education Conference, the website is aism.edu.my. And your final message, Florence?
I think parents needs to listen to their children and to pay attention to their needs, and don't expect others to do the job. I think you need to really spend time with your child and to get to know your child. Mm-hmm. A lot of parents will just pay money to get others to educate their children, but at the end of the day, it's the parents are the ones that should be doing that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me, ladies.
Thank you.
Once again, more information on the conference, aism.edu.my, or if you'd like to get in touch with the National Association for Gifted Children Malaysia, do log on to nagcm.org. That was Kylie Booker from the Australian International School, together with Zohaira Ali, President of the National Association for Gifted Children Malaysia, together with Florence Wong, mother of Reese Matthews, who's a child art prodigy, on meeting the needs of gifted children on The Bigger Picture, BFM 89.9.
BFM 89.9, the business station.